This is fantastic, this hot or not. It's just flying off the shelves.
This is absolutely Essendon, our latest episode of Hot or Not. Yeah, indeed. We've really been appreciating everyone's feedback. I think you're going to like this one today.
Massive response to the Kyle Langford episode, which is good. Interesting scores.
Yes, very, very much so. But today we are looking at one young Nicholas Cox.
Is it Nicholas?
The Cox
man. It is
man.
Nicholas with a K.
Yeah, well, it is.
It is with a K.
He runs with the K.
He does. Well, he didn't. His parents did.
Yes.
Well, as far as we know. But
excellent
choice.
Number 13, because I just thought with this one here, there's certainly going to be a difference of opinion, I think.
I agree.
And I know that we'll have at least one viewer who will be looking forward to Cox gags.
Well, let me have some
and I know you won't
time to think about that.
I know you won't be letting him down because Cox.
That gentleman's a bit of a concern. You know who you are. I think
it's the gunman.
Most of our community know who you are, I think. But good on you. I love someone who shares my love of childish humour, and we will certainly not let you down when it comes to talking about Big Cox.
No, because and he is 200 centimetres to be precise.
That is one mighty Big Cox.
Hell of a
Nick Cox.
Hell of a Cox.
This is probably one of the most fascinating hot or nots that we've done.
He divides the Bomber faithful.
Does he divide, or do we just don't know? I'm not sure. I suspect we just don't know, because the kid burst onto the scene in his first year, labelled the unicorn.
Was he? You don't want to
rangy,
like
200 centimetre, could be anything player, and then it all fell apart. And Nick had some injury issues. Maybe was overplayed by Benny Rutten in his first season. Possibly needed to be better managed as a young player, tall player.
Were people managed back then?
Well, I mean, when
you're knee awareness,
you're an 18-year-old kid with 200 centimetres playing AFL football. You're built like a strand of spaghetti. I think he was mismanaged. Thank you, Truck. What a contribution he made to the football club. But Nick Cox is back in the side after a period of injury. He's played all 9 games this year.
Every game so far this year. We're doing this just after round 9. So thus far he's had a pretty good run. He is still often maligned, though, so I think we should start by looking at what do the statistics say? What do they tell us?
I'm very glad you asked the question. Now, here's the interesting thing. The statistics that I'm going to give you tonight, they grade the players as average, above average, below average. Nick Cox is going to be getting a lot of below averages here, and I'll go through them in a minute. I think because he's being classified as a midfielder.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So his stats are not going to be Merit-esque or Parish-like.
Why is he classified as a midfielder?
He sort of moves around. He's a utility-type player. He's up on the wing. He's dropping back. I think he's more a defensive player than a midfielder. But so he's getting a lot of below averages, and I'll go through that now. So disposals, he's averaging 14.8 per game, which is below average for a midfielder. 7.6 of those are kicks. 7.2 are handballs. He's above average with marking, though, which you would expect being at 200 centimetres. His tackles are 2.7 below average. He's a big guy. They're not necessarily down at the knees tackling. And total clearances, I don't know why we're looking at a stat of total clearances for Nick Cox, but that's 1.1 a game and below average. So I think that's a little bit of a harsh kind of classification for him. I certainly don't think he's been below average.
No.
I think he's showing signs and he's building as a player. And we've got to think of this year as being a year for him to consolidate his fitness, get a stretch of games under his belt, and just gradually become stronger and more comfortable at this level, and I think he's doing that.
I think he is. Yeah, that's a good way to summarise. I think he is growing into his skin, and he's getting a bit more comfortable out on the field. I think he's serving a pretty good role. He seems to sort of be like the point man in transition from defence.
Yeah,
takes a bit of a mark that, again,
which is and that's the stats confirm that. With his marking average of 4.3 a game.
Yeah. Now there's some clutch moments sometimes down in defence where I think we all get a little bit edgy. A little bit panicky because sometimes we just don't get the result right.
Yeah, I mean, his disposal can be a bit shaky. Yeah. He does tend to turn the ball over at critical times, but that's all development. I don't know how many games he's played in total, but it's probably around 30, 35 games.
Yeah.
I don't think you can really judge a guy like Nick Cox, a tall 200 centimetre kid, until he's probably 25 and he's played 100 games. He's still growing, he's still filling out and still building his strength. But I think there's some really positive signs. His marking is improving. I think his decision making is improving, and he's a unique player that gives us a weapon that he's mobile and he actually does play as a midfielder a lot of the time. So to have a guy who's 2 metres tall, playing around the wing and off the half-back flank, it's a very, very unusual situation, and I think it's going to take a little time for him to really find how to play that role. But we do have the versatility of his mobility and his height, which is fantastic, particularly taking the kick-ins or the transition balls coming out of defence. So, and that's where I think over time he will really start to find his niche in that role for us.
I think that's probably that's the point, isn't it? Is over time, what is his trajectory?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of Bomber supporters perhaps don't see it as being sky high, limited. Let's just say.
Yeah.
This is a real tough one for me because I just don't know how I feel about him and where he fits into the side, because there's some games. I remember the Hawthorn game, the first game this year, did some really good stuff, and he's been averaging the last 4 or 5 rounds, I think, between 14 and 17 possessions. So it's not too shabby at all.
He's playing a role. He's definitely playing a role, and I think the coaching panel would be just delighted that he's out there. He's holding down his position. He's contributing. He does a couple of great things in every game, does a couple of poor things.
Yeah.
But you've got a player that if we can just be patient with him, I'm looking forward to seeing what Nick Cox will be like when he's 25 and he's 105 kilos. He could be a phenomenal player. So he's not there yet.
How many kilos is he now?
He'd look like, I don't know, but he would probably be 94 or something like that, 95 maybe.
Good 10 kg.
Yeah, another 10 kilos on that 200 centimetres, and he becomes, provided he keeps his mobility, he becomes a really unique type of player. So,
needs to go on that Sam Durham diet, doesn't he?
Well, that's right.
Whatever the hell he's eating.
Well, we know what he's eating. A lot of
Cox, man.
Sammy, keep off the protein, mate. But anyway, Nick Cox, let's go. You want to give him a score?
Oh boy, as I said, I find it tough. 6.5.
Yeah, I think he's going to get a 5.5 from me.
Right. Okay.
And that might sound like I'm going against what I've just said. But I can't see him being any better than that right now. It's a very tough one, actually. But I'm going to say 5.5. But I think 5.5 will be reviewed at the end of the year, and I'm expecting that to be better than that.
So that's a blended average of 6 from us.
I think that's probably right.
What do you guys... I think it is. It probably is. I think we'd love to know what you guys think about his performance thus far.
Yeah, it's pretty hard when you're measuring Cox.
It really is. It'd be good to talk to Cox at some stage.
Well, if only I had a tape measure, I'd probably get a much better read on Cox and his size.
Yeah.
But I don't have one. But
should invite him in.
We should slip
as long as he isn't subject of a gag order.
You know who you are.
Yes, that was just for you. All right.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Smoking.
On that terrible, terrible note, we bid you farewell.